Harry Thompson won't be driving to his favourite drinking hole anymore. Instead, he'll be taking a taxi. The 91-year-old former carpenter was recently seen driving his prized Holden ute along the wrong side of the road. He was breathalyzed with a blood alcohol level of 0.12. After 70 years behind the wheel, he's been ordered to stop driving for good.
Oh yes, I get a taxi or wherever I want to go, and Base will come and pick me up. Anything like that.
Harry's a popular figure about town.
Everyone knows Harry, yeah, nice bloke.
And at his local drinking haunt where he's a life member.
He's the patron of this place here, this wine bar. And they all love him up here.
Recounting his brush with the law with the Bonox today, Harry says he's more than happy to be off the road. Blake Doyle, NBN News. The 400 miners at Hunter Valley No. 1 are now 11 days into a planned 2-week stoppage. Today they indicated they're prepared to extend the strike for another fortnight. At a mass meeting, the miners voted in favour of a return to work, but on the condition they receive a favourable response to their log of claims for a new enterprise agreement. The company, Rio Tinto, has already attempted to have the strike declared illegal. The company claims the industrial action is costing it $1 million a day in lost revenue. Meanwhile, the loss of 120 jobs at the Torres colliery adjacent to Lake Macquarie took effect today. The cut means the workforce at the mine has been reduced to 200. A spokesperson for the mine's owner, Oceanic Coal, was unavailable for comment today. The company maintains opening a new shaft under the lake would be uneconomic. The union says there are potential buyers for the mine to keep it going, but claims the company's sale price is unrealistic. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
Anxious to find out as much as possible about their ancestors, aspiring genealogists came dressed like them for good measure. Presented by the Society of Australian Genealogists, a day-long seminar on how to track down relatives beyond the birth, deaths and marriages office.
The colonial records, things like colonial secretaries' correspondence, that will help people to flesh out their ancestors and learn a bit more about them.
But exploring your heritage also has its hitches. Migrants to this country whose surnames got lost through being anglicised or misspelt.
So you'll often suddenly find the records stop. You can't go any further and you find the name has changed dramatically, and then you've got to start searching for what that different name can be.
Those unable to take on the time-consuming task can hire professionals, but at a price.
And probably your basic charge these days would be $20, $30 an hour, that sort of rate. Certainly there are genealogists who will charge up to $60 an hour, depending on the work they're doing for you.
Grafton Speedway Club champion Brad Small was checking out his four-cylinder Alfa Romeo that took him to victory last year. The 20-year-old believes a bit of time in the garage will again see him first across the finish line in October.
Have a better motor and be a bit lighter, and it should handle a lot better, so it should be good.
Mate and rival Aaron Murphy, who trailed by 66 points in second place, will also be back, hoping to avoid the mechanical problems he had last time.
Oh, I'd definitely like to see number one on the side of the car, but yeah, we'll see what happens.
But the biggest problem for the pair is the fact there is no local track to practice on. Land tagged in 1991 for a proposed speedway has since been acquired for the city's new hospital, and another location where the sound can reach 75 decibels hasn't been found.
Just to compete, we don't get to practice. Just straight up there and straight into racing. So if there's a problem with your car, it's bad luck really.
The 11-year-old boy had been riding a bike to his friend's house when he was abducted by a man near Wickham Station shortly before 2:30 this afternoon.
He was coming past the Bennett house and the man pulled him off the bike and dragged him inside. And he said then he put the knife to his throat and told him that if he's, said anything, he'd kill him.
It's unknown how long the boy was kept hostage, but police say he was sexually abused. It's believed the boy ran to his friend's house after the man left the scene of the assault.
Yes, he was. He was very shaking.
Police searched Newcastle Station in the belief the offender may have tried to escape by train. A thorough sweep of the CBD was also conducted, but to no avail. The man is described as being aged between 35 and 45, with brownish-red short hair and a beard. He's tall with a medium build and was wearing a black jacket with metal studs, jeans and black shoes at the time of the assault. Anyone with information is urged to contact police. Simone Cobb, NBN News. By the time firefighters reached Hallmark Building Services in Denison Street around 3 this morning, the blaze had taken hold of the premises. With little more than a charred shell remaining, firemen turned their attention to saving the neighbouring properties.
The flames were pretty high, and the window of this side it blew out, and when it blew out, everything just went boom.
Woken up by the blaze, Tex Finn had run across the road to the house next door where 2 women were sleeping. The cladding business producing toxic fumes as it burned.
The girls were very, very lucky that the gases did not penetrate their residence.
The owner of the 10-year-old business, Ollie Prattle, looked on as firemen sifted through the rubble. The damage bill is expected to be around $250,000.
Oh, well, it doesn't feel too good, no. But I'll feel a lot better when the insurance company comes out.
17 years' worth of records were destroyed in the neighbouring muffler business, while the house on the other side had minimal damage. While it's unsure how the fire was sparked, it's believed to have been deliberately lit. Firefighters have linked it with a second blaze ignited just minutes later. A delivery truck at One Stop Pine near the Nine Ways was badly damaged when an arsonist built a bonfire underneath it. Simon Cobb, NBN News.
It has the potential for a public relations nightmare. Vodafone wants to build a mobile phone tower on hospital land, as it's entitled to do under the deregulation of the telecommunications industry.
The land within the John Hunter campus is Crown land, and they have the right. It doesn't require the area approval, the board approval, or the community or council approval.
Environmental and health concerns surround the proposed site. It's close to a daycare centre, there are plans to build a kids-safe house nearby, and the region's helicopter rescue service believes the 30-metre tower could pose serious safety hazards.
And they have raised the issue of a safety issue and are taking off in windy conditions, given the location of their Vodafone site.
But a compromise may have been reached during talks between Vodafone and Hunter Health today. An independent engineer will now look into how the existing tower, too small to carry any extra load, could be replaced to service all users.
I think it will be. I think it's important that we protect the environment that we're working on and aim to have one site. And I think the independent engineers will assess that situation and recommend that proposal.
When it comes to smoking marijuana, Australian teenagers are world leaders. It's estimated more than half of high school students aged 16 to 18 have used the drug.
They think it's a safe drug to use, more safer than alcohol, would you believe? So I think that's serious.
Studies show around 16% of Newcastle teenagers smoked marijuana last month. Drug educators say many wrongly believe the effects are harmless.
It does create memory problems. It does create, in teenagers, their schooling and their performance. It does inhibit that. It can reduce the birth weight in babies.
Other drugs such as amphetamines, ecstasy, LSD and heroin will also be targeted during this Thursday's International Day Against Drug Abuse. Governments are being called on to direct alcohol and tobacco taxes into drug education and prevention programs. Meanwhile, cigarette smokers are no longer welcome in the grounds of any Hunter Health hospitals or community health centres from next month. The move is part of the Fresh Air campaign to provide cleaner and healthier environments for patients and visitors.
Central North won the Caldwell Cup and Newcastle the Richardson Shield at Country Week, with both teams going through the competition undefeated. The Red and Whites may have won the main event, but tomorrow's showdown is being hailed as the unofficial battle for country honours. The clash is the curtain raiser to the main game, kick-off 5:30. Hunter returns to Newcastle tonight after their 3 out of 3 in the World Club Challenge. The Mariners have only a couple of days to get over the jet lag before returning to Super League's Australasian competition. They host Canberra on Friday. And also on a long return journey is Curry Super Sedan driver Ron Pine after the Speedster's efforts in the Australian titles in Darwin. In Car 1, Pine duelled with South Australia's Peter Logue in the final. But the title defence wasn't to be. Pine finished second and he's now started the long trip home. Jonathan Upton, NBN News.
For decades, the Air Force has been relying on a card system to manage around 1 million different diagrams of aircraft parts. It's old technology and far from ideal for the Air Force designers who rely on it to make changes to the planes.
We had about 1 million aperture cards. It takes a long time to sort through and audit that many cards. Cards could get lost, cards could be put back in the wrong place, and cards could deteriorate over time.
At a special ceremony at Williamtown today, the designers took delivery of a custom-made replacement, a state-of-the-art computer system which scans the rows and rows of data and diagrams onto 300 CDs. It can locate a sketch in around 5 seconds and cross-check it against a database to ensure it's been updated as required.
What it's going to mean is that we have one set of data in one place that's guaranteed correct. People all over the Air Force, particularly in Adelaide and Melbourne, can ring up and get access to the data.
The drawing management system is the first of its kind in Australia. The computer will be scanning cards for the next 6 months before it's fully operational. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News.
There's often a different driver on the 702, the school bus for Shortland Public School. Last month, however, parents were so concerned about the behaviour of one driver, they complained in writing to the State Transit Authority.
We have 5 children to get off the bus. He refused to stop the bus, went around the corner and kept going. And then when he did eventually stop, he spoke to Tina and he swore at her in front of all the children before letting them off the bus. My daughter is 5.5 and she was terrified.
Then yesterday, 2 6-year-old girls were hurt when they were thrown from their seats.
The bus driver was turning and we both fell off our seat.
Did you think the bus was going really fast?
Yeah.
They should get on the bus and be safe to get home, not get hurt on a bus.
The parents are demanding the driver be removed from the school run.
And I don't want our children or any other children subjected to this person again.
A spokesperson for State Transit confirmed this afternoon that both incidents are being investigated. He said the complaints against the one driver were of great concern. Jodie McKay, NBN News.
Nicola Johnson is like any energetic young woman. She loves to travel, go to plays and is learning a language. Nicola is also deaf-blind, a disability she's learned to live with since the age of 2. Unable to learn Braille, Nicola relies on finger spelling to communicate, and while her family and friends know the language, most of the wider community doesn't.
Nicola hates being in a room with people that don't communicate. It's a lonely feeling to be sitting in her chair and there's activity going on around her, but no one talks.
It's that isolation which Nicola finds difficult to cope with.
She would like people to learn finger spelling most of all, and to understand that they are normal people.
There are around 500 deaf-blind people in New South Wales, and one device that's helping many others to overcome the communication barrier is the telebraille machine. The sighted person types on a keyboard, which produces a braille message. The blind person can then read this with their fingertips and type a reply on their keyboard. The machine in turn translates this to a visual printout. It's a vital link to the rest of the world for the deaf-blind, but there's only one in New South Wales.
I'd like to see a lot more people who are able to use the telebraille being able to have that.
The machine costs $11,000, but for the deaf-blind, that's a small price to be included in a conversation. Sarah Griffiths, NBN News.
Ben Pepper is the name of their pick, and he's from Australia. Another Australian, the Newcastle Falcons he plays for. And everybody up here saying, don't ask me.
One of my kids at Left Marquette, Ben Melmoth, plays for the Newcastle Falcons, but I never heard of Ben Pepper.
They may not have heard of him now, but they will in the future. Pepper was the 56th player chosen in the NBA draft, joining three other Aussies, including Chris Anstey from the Southeast Melbourne Magic, drafted in at number 18. At 21 and standing at 213 centimetres, Pepper has the basketball world at his feet.
Yeah, it feels great. I'm just over the moon at the moment. Still a bit of a light head, but yeah, it's okay. Yeah.
Pepper's selection caps a meteoric rise after just 2 years in the national competition.
We heard a whisper that Boston were interested, and we sent off a couple of tapes, and they liked what they saw, and they drafted me. So, I haven't spoken to Boston at all yet, but I'm sure I will within the next couple of days.
Still on a high, Big Ben was hard at training with his Falcons teammates. Falcons coach Sean Dennis full of praise.
2 years ago, the kid's sitting in Geraldton and nobody knows him, no one knows of him. And then within 2 years, he's part of the Australian under-23 team. He's just been drafted by probably the most traditional ball club in the NBA and the Boston Celtics.
The draft is light on detail but high in promise. Pepper will learn more of his fate in the coming days. Blake Doyle, NBN News.
Wildfires coach Keith Gollan sparked new interest in the game today at Girls Rugby Carnival at Merriweather High School. The message was getting the basics right, advice that will be echoed tomorrow. Newcastle tackles West Harbour in the AAMI Cup, hoping to bounce back from last weekend's loss to Southern Districts.
Well, yeah, keep it simple and just concentrate on what we've got at hand. I mean, we had the game there for the taking and we just rushed a little bit and didn't complete the duties, so we want to make sure we do that this week.
Newcastle has had a mixed season. The Wildfires have won 4 of 9 matches and sit midfield on the ladder. Again, there have been team changes. Jared Heaney and Andrew James return after playing in the Australian under-21s trial.
I mean, they're class players and you don't continually play at the level they've been playing at if you're not a class player, and they had height and they had speed around the paddock.
It's Series 12 of the Newcastle Rugby Union. Singleton hosts Hamilton, Muswellbrook tackle University, Merewether meet Eastern Districts, while Wanderers veteran Steve Lee plays his 500th grade game when the Two Blues meet the Waratahs. Round 12 of the NRL kicks off tomorrow with a clash between Curry and Maitland. There are 4 games on Sunday with the match of the round between Wests and Souths. The sides share 3rd place on the ladder and there was only 6 points in it when they met in round 3 of the league. Wests won then 28 points to 22. And a full round of matches in the NBN Soccer League. Edgeworth plays Cessnock, while on Sunday there are home games for Hamilton, Belmont Swansea, Highfields and East Maitland. Jonathan Upton, NBN News.
Yeah, and in front of your face or above your head, so an overhead mark.
A group of enterprising young Australians took off today on the adventure of their lives. The team of 4 plan to cross the country and aim to provide a voice for the nation's young people.
We're going around Australia and we're just trying to understand what sort of problems the youth of Australia have. You know, in particular, we want to sort of talk to Aboriginal youth, country youth and migrant youth, because I sort of feel like they have been denied a voice.
Travelling in a second-hand 4-wheel drive and armed with a digital camera, the team will gather information by interviewing and filming young people all over the country. Motivated by our current political climate, they say our politicians are ignoring the voice of the young.
There's quite a few debates that's raging around in Australia, right? And always, I've noticed the debates always been hijacked with the adults. But people don't seem to understand the future of Australia depends on the youth.
Their long-term goal is to produce a documentary of their adventures. But today, the group were far more concerned with stocking their car with enough supplies to last the 14-week trip. Antonia Kidman, NBN News. Leonie Callaghan covers more than 1,000 kilometres each week in her newly created position as Aboriginal Health Liaison Officer. Responsible for the Lower Hunter, Ms Callaghan has clear ideas on how to make healthcare more accessible for Aborigines.
Working in a partnership with our Aboriginal services and the non-Aboriginal services and bringing everyone together and making sure that as a whole we're delivering an effective service to our people.
Ms Callaghan's job takes her from community centres throughout the region to the beds of surgery patients, helping Aborigines to overcome any fears and misconceptions they may have about hospitals and health services. She also talks to staff about Koori culture and the special needs of Aboriginal patients. It's a time-consuming task, but Ms Callaghan is determined to see results.
I'm looking forward to seeing the change. I'm looking forward to, sitting back and saying, wow, 12 months ago, our people weren't using that service, and now look, I've created, I've bridged that gap.
Sarah Griffiths, NBN News.
For most people, the word chemotherapy conjures images of patients with pale skin and no hair. A lot of international research is now focused on new drugs and combinations of drugs which target specific cancers without the side effects. One leading the charge is English academic Dr. David Newell.
People sometimes call chemotherapy chemical warfare, and there is certainly an aspect of that to it. What we're trying to do is develop drugs that hit the tumour without hitting the patient's normal cells at the same time.
Dr. Newell is in Australia to pass on the results of his research and forge links with local institutions such as the oncology unit at Newcastle's Mater Hospital. The hospital is keen to become part of the research, which eventually may include clinical trials of promising but as yet untested drugs.
We would take drugs in a relatively early phase of their development, perhaps not even studied in humans before, and we'd explore the possibilities of them being useful in the treatment of cancer.
Researchers caution against predictions of a cancer cure in the immediate future, but say progress on ways to attack specific cancers is very encouraging.
There's no doubt that over the last 5 to 10 years we'd had a revolution in our understanding of this disease, and I'm confident that within the next 10 to 20 years we will see a new generation of drugs which really work very selectively.
Phil Hind, NBN News. Freezing rain did little to dampen the enthusiasm of the young women playing in today's 18-hole Water Wonderland Junior Classic at the Nelson Bay Club. While the conditions were less than ideal, they were a valuable test.
It's cold sort of a day, it's wet. It's the sort of day where you could go around and just struggle, but if your mind's right, of course you could deal with it, and that's really what we want them to do.
17 girls aged 13 to 17, all of them single-figure markers, are spending the week at a coaching camp in Nelson Bay. Laurie Montague believes among the young hopefuls are a number who could one day play the Women's Pro Tour.
And we've got a number of our players now ranked in the top 5, say, in Australia. And these junior players are the next rung on the ladder, so there's some great talent amongst them.
Women's Golf New South Wales says the sport is enjoying a surge of interest from young women, due in no small part to the success of Carrie Webb.
I go out to schools as part of my job, take golf in schools, and in previous years, before Carrie, kids didn't know any names of any golfers, but now they all know, do you know Carrie Webb? Have you met Greg Norman?
The National Junior Age Championships will be played in Sydney next week.